Keep the white and the black separate.
Oh, that was frightening when we heard the cars coming down the road, and there were 3 carloads of Ku Klux Klan members.
Can we have somebody take somebody to a doctor?
Racism was the order of the day.
White America is denying us our freedom.
Being ignored, being called names.
Throughout the apartheid system.
Britishers were ruling this country. It was wartime.
Aung San Suu Kyi joined the 18th.
His efforts to prevent 2 Negroes.
Your father has embodied everything that was wrong with America.
He said in his inaugural speech,
Segregation now, segregation tomorrow.
segregation forever.
In the middle of the night, you hear the crash.
Different restrooms, different facilities.
Whites were privileged, blacks were underprivileged.
Walking towards you on the sidewalk, you as a black South African.
Your dad came vote.
Go to the opposite side.
No social power, no political power. We were like invisible people.
I have a dream. One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its.
I grew up in rural Alabama, about 50 miles from Montgomery. And growing up there, I saw segregation and racial discrimination. I tasted the bitter fruits of racism.
I can remember when my father went and attempted to buy sugar. There was a shortage of sugar that year, and they had decided that they would not sell sugar to black people, only to white people.
I got on the bus with my mother, and I sat in the vacant seat behind the driver, because I used to sit up near the front of the truck. My grandfather had a wood yard, and sitting there was natural to me. The bus driver said, "I'm not moving this bus until there's some order." Read that sign above the driver's head read, "Colored seat from the rear."
If you were in the downtown area with your family members and you saw a white family member coming on the same sidewalk as you, the blacks would have to step off the sidewalk and allow them to pass by.
Because if you didn't, it could be considered disrespectful, and they might kick you, beat you, or put you in jail.
My father would hire this old black man to help him do work once in a while. And I was probably 8, 9 years old. And we were sitting down to supper one evening. And my stepmother went and made a plate of food and took it out the back door to the steps where the black man was and gave it to him. And I went back to my father and I said, "Why isn't he eating with us?" And my father said, "Because black people don't eat with white people." That wasn't an answer to me that I could relate to, because it didn't make any sense to me.
I would come home and ask my mother, my father, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, why segregation, why racial discrimination? And they would say, "That's the way it is. Don't get in the way, don't get in trouble."
Remember the lynching of Lloyd Warner? Oh, goodness. When he was being pulled out of the jail to be lynched, I was coming through town, and I could see the masses of people who had gathered from all over. All the white people had gathered and brought their children. And they actually held their children up to see him being hanged to the tree.
On the courthouse lawn, that is. They set fire under his body and burned him alive.
And they dragged him to the black neighborhood.
Well, they did that before they hanged
as a warning, But let's not talk about it, because it bothers me to this day.
We cannot wait, we cannot be patient. We want our freedom, and we want it now. And that's what I said at the March on Washington.
We do not want our freedom gradually, but we want to be free now. We are tired of working full-time jobs for part-time income. We are tired of living in run-down, dilapidated, rat-infested shacks and slums.
I met Dr. Martin Luther King in 1958, 18 years old. To meet him, to meet Dr. King, to be in his presence was so unbelievable, so unreal.
I loved him.
The greatness of America is the right to protest for rights.
He had a combination of brilliance, bravery, and tremendous eloquence and moral force that made him kind of an animating force for that time.
To hand over to you the insignia of the Nobel Peace Prize.
Dr. King was full of hope. He was a man of great optimism.
He finished high school at 15. He finished college at 19. He got his seminary degree at 22, his PhD at 26. Dr. King was disciplined and mature beyond his age of 20. He emerged as a national leader at age 26.
All in favor, let it be known by standing on your feet.
He had a deep sense of humor about the human condition.
Oh, I've been hit so many times, I'm immune to it.
I have no first memories of being told about Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement. It was something that I grew up knowing.
Almost every young black man between the ages of 18 and 30 in the Second World War had been trained in violence. So that when Dr. King's home was bombed, they did what they'd been trained to do. They showed up with their guns, and they were ready to defend him and to go to war. And he said, no, take your guns back home. He said, we have to find a more excellent way. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth will leave everybody blind and toothless.
He didn't avoid confrontation. He didn't avoid getting arrested, but he did avoid violence.
His nonviolent movement, that says it all right there for Dr. King.
Civil rights movement needed to add the Gandhian dimension of nonviolent direct action.
We, the Negro citizens of Montgomery, have been involved in a nonviolent protest against the injustices which we have experienced on the buses for a number of years.
Martin Luther King got inspired from Gandhiji, and his movement was also non-violent.
Non-violence with passive resistance and still determined to use the weapon of love.
Are you going to ride the bus again?
No. Gandhi had a salt march to the sea where people just got out on the road and started walking. And so A. Philip Randolph, who had been an advocate of a march on Washington since the Roosevelt days, sent Bayard Rustin down to meet with us and convinced us that it's better to do it in an organized fashion and that there was national support for such a march.
We will be marching on the shoulder of the road and will not in any way be interfering with the pursuit of traffic.
The people in the United States, reflecting on the fact that 1963 would mark the 100th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, marked 1963 as a time for blacks to gain their real freedom, total freedom, in this post-slavery era. Well, the term free by 63 had become something of a slogan for black folk during the 1960s. By the time the March of Washington came around in 1963, this was almost a slogan of the movement.
Black people want these changes made in society, need them and are demanding them. But white people in America are saying, we join with them, we believe in this too. And that's important.
I joined Kennedy's campaign. He learned I had a close tie to Martin Luther King, had been working with him for some years, and that they were in trouble with the African American vote. And They had decided to set up a civil rights section of the campaign.
President Kennedy, in the early part of the summer of 1963, invited a group of us to the White House to meet with him. And it was in that meeting with President Kennedy that Mr. Randolph spoke up and said, "Mr. President," in his baritone voice, "the black masses are restless, and we're going to march on Washington."
Nobody's going to hand you anything on a platter. You got to fight for it.
I went to the rallies, and I got arrested.
A few days later, the 6 of us, including Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., met in New York City, and at that meeting we invited 4 major white religious and labor leaders to join us in issuing the call for the March on Washington. We went all across America teaching and preaching and urging people to go to Washington. Organize church buses, come by train, by car, by plane, but make it to Washington on August 28, 1963.
Be sure you contact your captains for anything, and they will take it from there. Do not try to do anything on your own. The whole thing is an orderly, conducted march.
We decided that the March on Washington was simply an historical event that we really should not miss.
Once you got off the bus, everybody, there was a feeling of love in the air.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All people at table 8.
I remember the morning of August 28, 1963. We came up on Capitol Hill. There was a sea of humanity coming out of Union Station. And the people were already walking, they were already marching. So we just hooked arms. It was like saying, "There go my people, let me catch up with you." And they literally pushed us toward the Washington Monument and on toward the Lincoln Memorial.
It was a very festive atmosphere, and it was kind of like a picnic atmosphere almost. A lot of people were sitting and laying on the grass, and they brought lunches along. They were eating their lunches.
I had my 3 little children. They had to sit and watch. And it was just very, very moving.
One of the great things about the March on Washington, it represented the best of our country in many different ways. First, there was no violence associated with the march. No, 250,000 people gathered, 250,000 people who had legitimate gripes and a great deal of anger. Still, there was no violence.
I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation.
The first few lines of such oratory will wake you up. Its beauty, its poetic beauty.
Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time.
It was just exhilarating. You had so much energy and soul. You was proud to be there. And then to stand there and hear Martin Luther King speak and see grown men crying as Martin Luther King spoke.
Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate.
It just touched, I think, everyone to their heart, and still does.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up live out the true meaning of its creed.
That speech was all inclusive. It represented all of us, all Americans. So it became not just a protest, or not just a march for civil rights, but a march for human rights, for everybody.
Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
That afternoon, President Kennedy invited us back down to the White House. He stood in the door of the Oval Office and he greeted each one of us.
It was a great day, and Kennedy was feeling great about it afterwards when he met with the civil rights leaders.
He was like a proud, beaming father. He said to each one of us, "You did a good job, you did a good job." And when he got to Dr. King, he said, "And you had a dream." March 1965 was another turning point in a long struggle for civil rights. We got the Civil Rights Act passed, signed into law in 1964, but hundreds and thousands, literally millions of people of color could not register to vote simply because of the color of their skin.
We're willing to be beaten for democracy, and you misuse democracy in the street. You beat people bloody in order that they will not have the privilege to vote. We have come to register to vote. You are the sheriff of this county because they're not registered, and that's one reason you don't want them to register. These are the people of Dallas County, and they have come to register, and you know this within your own heart, Sheriff Clark.
Sunday, March 7, 1965, after church, 600 of us line up to walk in a peaceful, organized fashion from Selma to Montgomery, to the state capitol, to say to the governor of Alabama and to the nation that people wanted to register to vote. We continued to walk until we come within hearing distance of the state troopers, and a man spoke and said, "I'm Major John Cloud of the Alabama State Troopers. This is an unlawful march, will not be allowed to continue. I give you 3 minutes to disperse and return to your church."
This march will not continue.
They came toward us, beating us with nightsticks, trampling us with horses, releasing the tear gas. I was hit in the head by a state trooper with a nightstick.
I got beat up. I mean, I didn't know exactly how I got beat up. I knew I got beat up.
I had a concussion at the bridge. I thought I was going to die. That Sunday became known as Bloody Sunday. The next day, early Monday morning, Martin Luther King Jr. came by to visit me in my hospital room and said, "John, don't worry, we will make it from Selma to Montgomery and the Voting Rights Act will be passed."
We have the right to walk to Montgomery if our feet can get us there.
He informed us that he had requested for religious leaders, ministers, priests, rabbis, and nuns to come to Selma. And more than 1,000 ministers, other religious leaders came to Selma that following Tuesday and walked to the point where we had been beaten 2 days earlier.
There were those who said that we would get here only over their dead bodies. Well, all the world today knows that we are here and we are standing before the forces of power in the state of Alabama saying we ain't gonna let nobody turn us around.
The difference about Bloody Sunday was it was Sunday afternoon and it was on cameras. And everybody saw it. And before the end of the month, the president was standing before a joint session of Congress introducing the Voting Rights Act.
We as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
At 7:10 this evening, Martin Luther King was shot in Tennessee. This was to be a gala occasion for a little Negro college from Mississippi appearing in Carnegie Hall with the great Duke Ellington. Martin Luther King, 20 minutes ago, died.
When Dr. King was shot and killed, well, that ignited a firestorm over the entire nation. I mean, that was a big shock and an unfortunate, really a most unfortunate event.
You hear that he had been shot.
Even today, it saddens. A man is killed. Saying Gandhi was killed. But why was he killed?
When we got the news, oh, the two of us just held each other and cried. I was heartbroken that this man's life had been taken like this. But I was amazed at how many white people were feeling the same loss that I was feeling. And that was gratifying, that they could see that this was a great man.
Of course, it brought about immediate disorder, widespread rioting, looting, burning in the major American cities.
The rioting, looting, and bloodshed was worst in the nation's capital.
Everything could have stopped. They had enough manpower to stop anything from happening in Washington.
I remember looking out over the Woodrow Wilson Bridge and seeing smoke coming up from all different parts of Washington.
I felt it was disgraceful in the wake of Martin Luther King losing his life, a man who was all about peaceful movement, who went through humiliation, disrespect.
We could look out our window and see the stores on fire. And why are they burning? Why? And we closed our blinds and we prayed and we just cried and prayed.
It was disheartening to see the vandalism of people trying to gain something for nothing.
That bullet didn't kill Martin Luther King. It just set his spirit free. And Martin Luther King is far more powerful now, spiritually, all over the world.
Today I want to say to the people of America and the nations of the world, we're on the move and no wave of racism.
Things are getting better. Each successive generation seems to be making progress in changing attitudes when it comes to race.
Wasn't it so exciting when Barack Obama was elected president at 95? I never expected to see this in my lifetime. Never.
Tonight we proved once more that the true strength of our nation comes not from the might of our arms or the scale of our wealth, but from the enduring power of our ideals: democracy, liberty, opportunity, and unyielding hope.
There's a straight line between King and Obama.
This is beyond our imagination, what we thought was possible.
The election of Barack Obama says far less about where black people come than it does about where the American people have come.
He is my son's commander-in-chief. My son is in the military, and I feel wonderful about that.
It is great to see all of you.
President Barack Obama understands that he's standing on the shoulders of hundreds and thousands of people. People who bled, people who went to jail, but also on the shoulder of people who died.
to stand up for freedom together. We have come to register to vote.
50 years since the March on Washington, or 48 years since the March from Selma to Montgomery, we made a lot of progress. We've come a distance. The signs are gone, and the only places people will see those signs today would be in a book, in a museum, or on a video. They're gone, and they will not return. But we're not there yet. We have not yet built what Dr. King would call the beloved community. We still have work to do.
We've come a long way with discrimination, but we have a long way to go too.
The civil rights movement is an incredible story. It's an incredible American narrative, but it has to be introduced to a new generation of leaders and to a new generation of individuals in the form that they receive information.
We must let the nation know, and we must let the world know that it is necessary to protest this threefold evil.
The relevancy of Martin Luther King's movement definitely gives people hope. It allows people to kind of see that there is a possibility that actually only one person can change a lot and really stand up for something that maybe a lot of people believe in, and they just need someone to kind of kickstart it.
I have a dream.
I am committed to keeping Martin Luther King's dream alive in various ways.
I think it's important that not only Americans, but people across the globe know about history, know about these movements, know about the struggles.
I think that between Dr. King and Gandhi and Nelson Mandela, they put us on the path to peace.
The correlation between Madiba's movement, Nelson Mandela, and the Martin Luther King movement being a non-violent approach to things. The two really came together, and I think that the world looked to these two movements as a stepping stone to see that peaceful agreements can be reached.
Martin Luther King, his name is a legend. Just as Gandhi's name is legend. It is there. We need many Gandhis and we need many Martin Luther Kings.
There are hundreds of human rights activists and social workers who are not only speaking for their rights, but who are struggling to achieve their goal of peace, education, and equality.
We will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day.